Welcome back, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to look at control flows within Python. Now, some of you would have come across this concept in other programming languages, but we have to cover this because it's an important part of learning to code in Python. So we're going to cover if, elif, and else. We'll also cover repeating actions. So we look at while loops. We'll understand how to break out those loops and to continue. And of course, all of our examples will be based upon insurance claims data as we've done with all of our lessons so far. So let's get into some coding. Right, the most fundamental decision in any programming language is, if this is true, do that. That's what the if statement gives us. Elif lets us check additional conditions, and then else catches anything else that we didn't match in the process. Let me show you with this claims priority function. So in this, we've defined this function called getClaimPriority, and we've called it 4 times, okay? And each of those times we have 2 arguments we're passing it, because there are 2 parameters, loss type and claim value. And in each occurrence, and each time that we call it, we've got these different values we're passing in it, and the conditions with the if, elif, and else will determine exactly what the output's going to be. So when we run this, you see there are 4 outputs: critical, high, medium, and standard. And it all depends on the values that you're putting in. And the idea of this if, elif, and else is to be able to determine exactly which category we are going to go into based upon the inputs that we're providing. So if we put fire damage and 12,000 in, the loss type is the fire damage, and the claim value is 12,000. So the first thing it does is looks for the loss type. And in the first case, fire damage, yes, that is being passed in. And the claim value is greater than 5,000. Yes, that is considered true. And therefore it returns critical. Okay. Now, if that was not the case, like for example, the second one, we see flood going in. So it doesn't satisfy the first condition, but it does satisfy the second condition because it's looking for both fire damage or flood, okay? Notice then that the order does matter because fire damage occurs in 2 different conditions in this. But in the first condition, it also has the claim value greater than 5,000 that it has to be satisfied in order to return critical. Once it finds a condition it's satisfied, Python will not look any further. It will go straight to the end of the if statement. And in this case, the end of it basically ends the function's process. So the idea is put your most specific cases at the top, i.e. where you've got multiple conditions. Let's just have a look at nested ifs now. So you can nest an if inside another if statement. This is useful when we've got a second decision, but only makes sense once the first condition has passed. So in our example on the screen, we say if the claim status is open, then and only then do we go into the next set of if else. Okay, so it's a way of breaking down your conditions. Just be wary though, if you start nesting too deeply, your code can look a little bit difficult to read. And that's because as you're nesting, if you notice, the code is going more and more over to the right. And eventually it's going to wrap around itself, and that can make the code look a little bit messy. So just be wary of that. And I've run this, and you can see the output at the bottom. So in the first condition, we have claims 002, which is an open status and a value of 3,500. So when we hit our function, it goes in and says, right, is the status open? Yes, it's open. So it will go inside there. Then it looks at the value, and the value is less than 10,000. Because if you look on the screen, you'll see that you only go into that condition if the value is greater than 10,000. Or you only satisfy that condition when it's over 10,000, but ours is under. So it will go into the else condition, and it will say it's open and it's just standard processing. Okay. Now, when you look at the last one, It says, okay, claim 011, status is closed. So immediately, if it says status is closed, it doesn't satisfy the first if statement. And therefore, everything underneath that is irrelevant here. We'll go straight to the else condition, and it will say it's already closed, no further action. So hopefully that isn't too complicated. Just be wary of nesting too deeply though. Let's have a look at for loops now. Now, a for loop lets you repeat a block of code once for every item in a sequence. So this is how you process a batch of claims, for example, iterating over results or building up to a date. The loop variable, I've called it claim here, takes the value of each item. And for each item, it will then do a calculation for payout and print out the result. So the for loop says claim in claims. So claim is basically the identifier for the current iteration. Claims is our list of dictionary items. And for each one, it's going to treat that item as claim and it's going to work on that one. So we'll take the value of the claim minus 250 and then print the ID, loss, and the payout. And then it will go to the next iteration and so on until it finishes the list. We could go over a range of numbers if we wanted to. If you want to do this for loop for a set number of occurrences. So in this example, we've set up a range of 1 through to 4. Okay, and remember, when we've got a range of numbers, we stop before the final one. So we go 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that range is defined as. And for every single item in that range, we're going to print the step and say it's complete. So when we look at the output, we've got step 1 is complete, step 2 is complete, step 3 is complete, as it goes through that range of numbers. Now I've taken our claims dictionary here and I've amended it slightly to give another for loop here, but this time I'm using an enumerate function against that dictionary and saying, right, put a number against each of the items that we're going to go through, starting from 0. So it'll be 0, 1, and 2. And then we're going to print the index, the item number, i.e., in the actual items that we're going through. So it'll be 0, 1, and 2, and then the claim ID next to it. Okay. Now, because we want 1, 2, 3, not 0, 1, 2, because in a list it makes more sense to just put 1, 2, 3. I'm adding a 1 to the index, and then I'm printing the claim ID next to that. Right. So this is one of those ones where you want to try and play with this code so you understand how enumerate works and why I'm using that +1 against each item that we're going to go through. So let's look at while loops. A for loop is for when you know your collection up front, okay? So you know how many items you're going to be going through, how many iterations you'll be doing. But a while loop is for when you keep going until something actually happens. You don't know in advance how many times you'll be running this. This is exactly the pattern, for example, an AI agent uses when it has to keep refining its operation until the quality score is high enough. So it's really important for us at this stage, who are potentially going to write AI agents, to be able to understand a while loop. Okay, so let's have a look at our example up here on the screen. So we've set 3 parameters: attempts, max attempts, and resolved. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue this while loop whilst resolved is false and the number of attempts is less than the maximum that we've set. So we've set the maximum to 3. Each time we go into here, we're going to increase the number of attempts. Okay, so we're attempting to contact the policyholder, for example. The response here, if you look at that, it's an input. So we're going to ask the user to input something. So when you run this, it will actually ask you to put a value in, yes or no, i.e., did the policyholder answer when you try to contact them? Okay. Now, if the response is yes, then we've said resolved, contact's been made, right? End of story. But if it hasn't, then it will carry on round the while loop until both of those conditions are no longer true. And those conditions are not resolved and attempts is less than maximum attempts. Both of those have to be true for it to stay in that while loop. So what's going to break it out? Well, either of those conditions being false. First one being resolved, i.e. the policyholder responded and the response becomes Y. Sorry, the resolved becomes Y, in which case it will break out that loop. Or we've now done too many attempts, i.e. we've hit the maximum attempt level, and in which case it will come out the while loop as well. And there's another if condition at the bottom. So if we run that, did the policyholder respond? And we'll say no. Okay. Second attempt, did the policyholder respond? No. Third attempt. Why is it going to the third attempt? Because it's saying it's not resolved. That's true. It's not resolved. The attempts is less than the maximum. All three attempts were exhausted. So we tried 3 times and it's now fallen out of that loop because even though not resolved is true, the attempts has now gone beyond the threshold that we set. So it's now gone down to the bottom and says, right, if resolved, which it wasn't, then print claim has been successfully progressed. But in our case, it wasn't resolved, so it falls into the else condition. It says all the maximum attempts have been exhausted, so it's escalating to a supervisor. So that's a simple example of a while loop and the conditions that have to be met in order for it to jump out of that while loop. Let's have a look at breaks. Now, a break exits the loop immediately. The moment Python hits a break, it jumps out of the loop entirely, no matter how many items are left. This is useful when you found what you want and you don't want to go any further. So let's run this. Okay, so what's our script doing? So we've got our list here, a list of dictionary items, and we're going through each of those, and we're checking to see whether the value of the claim is over 10,000. Now it's going to start with the first one, obviously, and go through one by one. But as soon as it hits the second item, it's 12,000, okay, the value, which means that this condition is satisfied. It prints that it's found a high value claim item, and then it breaks, meaning that that's it. We've satisfied what we were looking for. We don't need to go any further. So instead of carrying on through each item in the list, each dictionary item in the list, it just stops there. It breaks out. A break works in while loops too. Okay, so just something for you to note. Now, in contrast to a break, we have something called a continue. Okay, so what does a continue do? It does exactly what it sounds like it's going to do. It's basically saying, I'm going through this item and I've determined that I don't want to do the rest of the code for this loop. Just carry on and go to the next item in the list. So in this particular case, as it goes through each item in the list, it's saying, right, it's checking the status. If the status is closed, then we're just going to say it's already closed and then continue. So it's not going to go to working out the payout or printing the processed payout because it's not relevant for this particular item. It's already a closed claim. So carry on till we find till we go to the next item and see if that's open or closed. If it's open, it will do the processing of working out what payout is and printing it. But if it's closed, it will just say continue. We don't want to do any calculations. So if I run that, you'll see that it processed claim 002 because it was open, and it processed claim 011 because that was open. For both claim 007 and 015, it said it's already closed. I'm not working anything out here, and just continued. Every claim is checked, but the closed ones are just skipped over because the payout calculation is irrelevant. So just to recap, now we've covered if-else conditions, we've covered nested ifs, we've gone through for loops, and we've covered while loops as well. And we've understood how to break out of them and how to bypass pieces of code in order to continue on to the next item. So that's as much as I want to cover on control flows in this lesson. And hopefully we'll build upon it as we go through the course.